A very warm good morning to all of you. Let's continue with today's article. What is the stalemate over the US debt ceiling? Why is there a debt ceiling for the US? What are the consequences of a debt default to the global economy? So, what is the stalemate? Let's find out the meaning of stalemate. Stalemate. Stalemate, a situation in which further actions or progress by opposing or a situation in which further actions or progress by opposing or competing parties seems to be impossible, bring to a pause to each statement. Cross your champion. Each champion. Such a position counting as draw in which a player is not a check but cannot move except into a check. You statement over US debt ceiling. Debt ceiling is ceiling. Ceiling. The debt ceiling is a limit on the total amount of government borrowing. What is the stalemate over the US debt ceiling? Means now the limit debt ceiling means the limit at which at any country can borrow money from any part of organization or any part of other country. Yes, there is a limit that after this amount of money, this country will not borrow. Uh, okay, in near future. So, and the stalemate is something that is not progressive, okay, something that is being opposed. Why is there a debt ceiling for the US and what are the consequences of debt default to the global economy? Okay, the story so far, the US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. So, in India, we have Finance Minister. Similarly, in US, there is a US Treasury Secretary. Okay, the position is called as US Treasury Secretary. Janet Yellen notified Congress last week that the country could default on its debt as early as June 1 if the Republican dominated House of Representatives and President Joe Biden's White House did not reach a consensus to raise or suspend the debt ceiling. Okay. Means the what she has told that on June 1 that uh, that House of Representative is dominated by the Republican Party. Okay, and if the Republican Party or the President Joe Biden will not talk about to extend this debt ceiling, then the country will come in default. Okay, means they wanted to extend the debt ceiling because okay, what is the US debt ceiling? When the federal government spends more than it brings in, it runs up a budget deficit. It has to borrow money to meet its financial obligations, accruing debt. Means, look, there is a suppose that there is a X amount of money in the budget, but the spending is quite higher than the budget, so they have to borrow money to compensate that spending. So in that case, they have to. There is a concept of debt ceiling that at this much amount of money we can't borrow. So the government borrows by creating and selling debt securities like bonds to US investors and companies. So how government borrow money? By selling debts and securities like bonds to US investors and companies, banks, pension funds for investors and countries. Investors and countries. The largest part of these are owned by the US federal government itself, which keeps the money for social security scheme, Medicare, federal pensions, and so on. While the administration and Congress decide on taxation and spending, the collection of taxes and the borrowing of funds is done by the U.S. Treasury Department. In 1917, Congress passed the Secondary Liberty Bond Act to allow then President Woodrow Wilson to take out of funds for the First World War without waiting for the approval of best absent Congress lawmakers. However, the Congress created a limit of borrowing the $11.5 billion at that time, thus creating a debt ceiling that could only be raised by the approval of Congress, House and Senate. Okay, the US government was hit or come close to hitting the debt ceiling multiple times. According to Treasury Department figures, Congress had acted 78 separate times since 1960, either to permanently raise or temporarily extend or to revise the definition of the debt type. While the government continues to receive taxation revenue after hitting the debt ceiling, uh, cannot borrow more and cannot borrow any more to pay its existing bills. So, so what they wanted, okay, means whenever they hit the debt ceiling, so in return, what they do, they increase the tax amount. The US would then be unable to pay its debt holder, resulting in a default. So, why have debt ceiling standoffs become a recurring issue? Recurring issue means a repetitive issue. For starters, the debt ceiling is not a forward-looking budget instrument, that it does not reveal what potentially ideal levels of spending look like. First, Congress approves programs for which it does not have the entire funding, and there is a limit on how much Treasury can borrow or pay for these already approved programs. First, Congress approved. So, Congress is that combination of both House and Senate. So Congress approves programs for which actually whatever the projects that is going for the welfare of their people, they will approve that project even they have not funding, and they will borrow the money to complete that project. Take this analogy for instance, if Congress approves $100 for spending, and $70 comes from taxes, but the cap on what the government can borrow to pay for the rest is fixed at a mere $50. So now the writer says that suppose there is an example. Suppose there is a $100 for spending. So the budget amount is $100, and from okay, means, suppose there is a project that is approved by the Congress at a cost of $100, and $17 has been is the money that has been collected from the taxes. But $50 it can borrow. That is a debt ceiling. Okay. Another reason why disagreements over the debt limit have often, so ultimately what they will do, so 17 plus 50, that is 85, and what about other $15? So if they will not borrow more 15, so the project will be in a halt. So what ultimately they will extend that debt ceiling, okay, so that they will complete the project. Another reasons why disagreement over the debt limit happen often, almost annually since 2011, is that it has become a political bargaining chip, as any raise or suspension has to be approved by the Congress. As American politics becomes increasingly polarized, the opposition has often used the debt limit as a way of getting budgetary and other legislative concession. The US came dangerously close to the defaulting on its debt in 2011 when the Republican and the Obama administration could not reach an agreement to hike the ceiling till the last minute. So in 2011, US was going to be default. Observers have called the current impasse between House Republicans and Biden administration even messier than 2011. So what expert has told that even the situation is currently worse more than in 2011. The Republican Speaker Kevin McCarthy led House passed a bill that pays $4.8 trillion in spending cuts with increase in the current $31.4 trillion debt ceiling. However, Mr. Biden said that he wants a clean debt ceiling hike and won't negotiate any kind of cuts resulting the current deadlock. The Republicans came. Okay, that Republican Speaker is Kevin McCarthy, and he passed a bill that pays $4.8 trillion in spending cuts, with an increase in current $31.4 trillion debt ceiling. So this is the current debt ceiling, $31.4 debt ceiling. However, Mr. Biden said that he wants a clean debt ceiling hike and won't negotiate any kind of cuts resulting in the current deadlock. Ms. Yellen and other economists suggested doing away with the debt ceiling, which does not contribute to fiscal discipline anymore and leads to frequent political grandstanding, often at the risk of national and global financial stability. What will happen if the US defaults? Analysts say there is no set post default scenario since the US has never actually defaulted on its debt before. So, means right now the US has not seen any kind of such situation because they have never defaulted. Even the situation is so much worse. They have warned, however, of a catastrophic situation for American and global financial market. But there will be a catastrophic situation will arise after if they will default. If the government cannot make interest payment to the domestic and foreign investors who own its debt securities, it could plunge the globe into financial crisis, say Wall Street experts. So if the government will not pay its debt, then definitely that global market will go into a crisis. The CFR points out that unthinkable event of a US default could lead to another downgrade of US credit for news by agencies. So if they will default, then obviously their credibility will go down and no one will believe US, especially in the financial sector, whether they will lend their money to US or not in near future, the investor. Large scale job losses, weakening of dollar, stock sales off, and rise in the cost of borrowing for US government. So they will borrow the money at higher cost after they will come in default. The US Treasury Secretary notified Congress last week that the country could default. So, okay, this was today's article. That's all for today.